What if one small gesture could unravel a mystery that saves everything you hold dear? Step into the world of Tom Bennett, a 62-year-old ex-Navy SEAL, standing behind the worn counter of Bennett's Corner Store, a beloved gym in the heart of Willow Creek for over 3 decades. The scent of fresh apples fills the air, the creak of the wooden floor echoes with every step, and a faded photo of Tom's SEAL team hangs in his office. A past he keeps locked away, its memories tucked in a box of medals gathering dust on a shelf. To the townsfolk, this isn't just a store. It's a sanctuary where neighbors share laughter, pin lost dog flyers on a corkboard, and Tom has watched generations grow. But now, his store teeters on the brink of collapse, and a late-night decision could change everything. The Bennett family has poured their hearts into this store, a place where stories are swapped over the counter, and the earthy scent of potatoes lingers like a warm embrace. But a gleaming megamart opened 10 months ago, its neon lights stealing Tom's customers, casting a shadow over the quaint aisles. For the first time in 35 years, Tom's behind on his mortgage, the shame a heavy weight in his chest, pressing against his heart with every breath. At dinner, his wife, Margaret, whispered, "The gas bill's overdue, Tom, and the bank won't stop calling," her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm, her hazel eyes clouded with fear. Their daughter, Emily, an Air Force mechanic on her second tour, doesn't know their struggles. Her cheerful video calls a shield against their hidden truth, her laughter a bittersweet melody that masks their reality. Now, picture yourself as Tom at 8:55 p.m., the door's bell jingles, and a tired family steps in. Do you help them despite your own struggles, or protect what little you have left? Let your heart decide, and join us at Daily Narrated Stories for more tales that touch the soul. Subscribe now, and hit that like button to stay with us on this journey of compassion and courage. The family moved through the aisles with a quiet precision that reminded Tom of his SEAL training, their steps measured under the dim glow of flickering fluorescent lights casting a pale sheen on the scuffed tile floor. David Carter led his wife, Sarah, and their 2 children, a boy with messy brown hair and a girl with a faded scarf around her neck, through the narrow rows. Tom watched from behind the counter, his fingers brushing the rough edge of a cloth, the texture grounding him as David hesitated over a can of beans, placing it back after a whispered exchange with Sarah, her voice a faint murmur over the hum of the old fridge. The children trailed behind, their sneakers scuffing softly, hands empty of the cookies most kids would snatch, their restraint a silent echo of Tom's own lean years after leaving the Navy. Nights when he'd skipped meals so Margaret and Emily could eat, the gnawing hunger a ghost that still haunted him on quiet nights. At the counter, their basket held the bare essentials, a pack of discounted ground beef, its wrapper crinkled and cold against Tom's palm, a loaf of day-old bread marked down to 60 cents, its crust rough under his fingers, the faint scent of yeast a whisper of better days, and a bag of bruised apples, their faint sweetness mixing with the store's woody aroma, a bittersweet reminder of abundance long past. David placed each item down with a careful reverence, as if each choice carried the weight of their survival, his hands trembling slightly, the calluses on his fingers a testament to years of hard work. Sarah stood beside him, her face etched with exhaustion, her hands steadying her children, who stared longingly at a tray of turkey sandwiches behind Tom. The boy's gaze lingered, his small frame tensing with hunger, his breath hitching before he looked away, pressing his lips shut to silence his want. The girl's scarf slipped as she tilted her head, her hope fading into a quiet resignation that pierced Tom's heart like a dagger, her eyes reflecting a maturity no child should bear. "New in Willow Creek?" Tom asked, his voice warm as he scanned their items. The scanners beep a sharp note in the stillness, each sound a reminder of the growing total that loomed like a storm cloud. "Yes, sir," David replied, his words clipped with a military cadence Tom recognized from his own days in the SEALs, a rhythm that echoed through the years. "We moved here 3 weeks ago after my medical discharge." Tom noticed the slight limp as David shifted, favoring his left leg, a lingering wound that mirrored the ache in Tom's own knee from a mission gone wrong years ago, a constant reminder of his past that throbbed on cold nights, the pain a whisper of battles fought far from home. The total reached $46.20, and David's face crumpled, a flicker of despair crossing his features like a shadow over a battlefield. His hand hovered over his worn wallet, fingers shaking as if willing more money to appear, the leather frayed at the edges from years of use, its creases a map of struggle. Sarah's shoulders slumped, her gaze dropping to the floor, her hands tightening on her children's shoulders, her knuckles whitening with the effort to hold herself together. The children stood still, their earlier longing replaced by a heavy understanding, their small faces etched with a maturity that clawed at Tom's heart, a silent testament to a life of scarcity. He remembered a statistic he'd read in a veteran's newsletter. Over 40% of discharged soldiers face financial hardship, their service met with broken promises and mounting debts. A truth that settled over him like a cold fog, pressing against his chest, its weight a reminder of his own battles after leaving the Navy. In that moment, Tom's heart took over, a surge of empathy driving him forward, as instinctive as his SEAL training, a call to action that drowned out the fear in his gut. "You know," he said, his voice steady as he tapped the register, the keys clicking softly under his calloused fingers. "We're launching our veteran family support discount today." He met David's gaze, a silent bond forming between them. Two men who'd faced danger, even if on different battlefields, their shared history a bridge in the dim light, a flicker of understanding that warmed the cold air. David frowned, his brow knitting with confusion, his eyes searching Tom's face for answers. "A discount? But I'm not in uniform. How did you?" Tom's smile deepened, the lines around his eyes softening like the pages of a well-loved book. "It's in the way you move, the way you check the exits. You never forget the training. It's in your bones." He added items to their bags, a pair of turkey sandwiches for the kids, their wrappers crinkling softly, a gallon of milk, its chill seeping through the plastic against his palms, and a few oranges, their citrus scent sharp and sweet, a promise of brighter days. The girl's eyes widened, her small hand reaching out before pulling back, a spark of hope flickering in her gaze like a candle in the dark, her breath catching in a quiet gasp. "I served in the SEALs, long ago," Tom shared, his hands moving with the ease of years, memories of covert missions and the roar of choppers flooding back, the camaraderie of his team a distant warmth that still lingered in his heart. He recalled a moment from those days, a teammate sharing his last protein bar during a grueling operation, a kindness that kept him going through the night, the taste of that shared meal a lifeline in the darkness, the memory a bittersweet ache that grounded him now. David straightened, a glint of recognition in his tired eyes, the exhaustion momentarily lifting as he spoke. "Rangers, 3 tours, 2 in Afghanistan, 1 in Syria," he said, his voice tinged with pride, though the weight of those years slumped his shoulders, the lines on his face deepening like scars on a battlefield. The children watched, their eyes bright with wonder, as Tom slipped the extra items into their bags. The boys' fingers twitched, imagining the sandwich's taste, the bread soft and the turkey savory, while the girl stared at an orange, her lips parting in a quiet gasp that tugged at Tom's soul, a reminder of Emily's own childhood wonder when she'd first tasted fresh fruit from the store's shelves. "Sir, we can't take this," David said, his voice tight with the pride that had carried him through war zones, the kind that had kept him alive when survival seemed impossible, his jaw clenching as he fought to maintain control. "We'll pay for what we chose. That's all we can afford." Tom leaned in, his voice low, the scent of pine shelves mixing with the tension in the air, a faint creak of the floorboards beneath them. "I've been where you are, trying to feed a family when the world's against you. They don't tell you how hard it is to come back, do they? The battles don't end when you take off the uniform." The words stirred Tom's own memories. Nights counting coins to buy Emily's school supplies, the sting of empty government promises, the sleepless hours wondering if they'd make it through another month, the weight of those years a heavy cloak he still carried. He adjusted the total to $30, a number he knew David could manage, the numbers glowing softly on the register's screen, a small act of defiance against their shared struggles. Sarah's hand rested on David's arm, her eyes pleading, a silent language forged through years of hardship, of deployments and recoveries. The children's hopeful smiles, glowing with the promise of a meal, spoke louder than any protest, their small faces alight with a joy that warmed the dim store, a beacon of light in the gathering storm. After a tense pause, David's posture softened, and he gave a sharp nod, a soldier's gesture heavy with gratitude, the weight of 1,000 unspoken thanks in that single motion. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice thick with emotion, a bridge between two men bound by duty, their shared history a quiet understanding that filled the space between them. As they gathered their bags, the children's faces lit up at the sight of the sandwiches. The girl hugged hers like a treasure, clutching it to her chest as if it were a prize, her brother's grin breaking through his earlier reserve, a smile that reached his eyes for the first time that night. Tom watched them head to their rusted sedan, its paint peeling, one taillight flickering like a dying ember in the cold night air, the chill biting at his skin as he lingered by the door, the frost a sharp contrast to the warmth in his heart. While helping with the last bag, he slipped a $50 bill, meant for the electric bill, into a side pocket along with a note on a torn receipt. From one vet to another, no strings attached. The paper crinkled under his fingers, a small sound in the quiet night, a secret act of kindness he hoped would light their way. David tried to thank him again, his voice thick with emotion, but Tom waved it off with a warm smile, the lines on his face deepening with kindness. "Welcome to Willow Creek. Come back soon," he said, his words a quiet promise of community, a lifeline in the darkness. The bell's soft chime faded as they left, leaving the store in a heavy silence that pressed against Tom's ears, the stillness a stark contrast to the warmth of moments before. He locked up, his movements slow, the day's weight settling into his bones like a frost, each step on the creaky stairs to the apartment he and Margaret had shared for 30 years a reminder of their shared struggles. The scent of her beef stew lingered, a faint comfort in the air, but it couldn't warm the chill in his chest, a cold knot of worry that tightened with every breath. Margaret sat at their scratched dining table, her ledger open, her glasses reflecting the dim light, the scratch of her pen a quiet rhythm in the small room. Her face, still beautiful to Tom despite the worry lines etched by years of hardship, was shadowed with concern, her lips pressed into a thin line, her brow furrowed as if carrying the weight of the world. "You gave away more today, didn't you?" she asked, her tone weary, not accusatory but resigned, her finger tracing a line of red ink that bled across the page like a wound, a testament to their mounting debts. "Tom, we're drowning. How much longer can we hold on?" Tom sank into a chair across from her, the wood groaning under his weight, a familiar sound that mirrored his exhaustion, the ache in his bones a reflection of the burden he carried. They were a veteran family, Margaret, with little ones, he said, his voice soft, pleading for her to understand the call that had driven him, the echo of his seal oath to never leave a man behind, a vow that lingered even after he'd left the Navy, a promise that defined him. Margaret turned the pages, revealing a growing sea of debt, each number a stark reminder of their struggle, the columns of red ink a silent accusation that seemed to scream in the quiet room. "And you're a veteran with a family to protect," she replied, her voice firm with a mother's instinct, though her eyes softened with the love that had sustained them through decades, a love that had weathered every storm. "The bank called. We're 3 payments behind. If we don't pay by next Thursday, they'll foreclose. We could lose everything. Our home, our legacy, our life." Her voice broke on the last word, a crack in the strength she'd held onto for so long, her hands gripping the table's edge, trembling with the weight of their reality, her knuckles white against the worn wood, her breath hitching as she fought back tears. Tom's stomach twisted, the stew in his bowl now tasteless, its warmth turning cold in his mouth, the rich aroma souring in his nose as the reality of their situation settled over him. "I'll find a way," he said, though doubt crept into his words, the promise hollow against their dire straits, his voice wavering like a candle in the wind, the flicker of hope dimming with every passing second. "Maybe a small loan?" Margaret shook her head, her fingers shaking as she closed the ledger with a thud that echoed in the small room, a sound that seemed to reverberate through their lives, a final note in a symphony of struggle. "With what to back it?" "The store's all we have," she said, removing her glasses and rubbing her temples, staving off a headache that pulsed behind her eyes, her exhaustion a mirror to his own. "I love your heart, Tom. It's why I fell for you at that veterans hospital all those years ago. But we have to put us first. We can't keep giving when we have nothing left." The words lingered, a painful truth wrapped in their shared history. The clink of their spoons the only sound as they ate in silence, each bite heavy with uncertainty. The taste of the meal a bitter reminder of the life they might lose. Sleep eluded Tom that night, and he returned to the darkened store, the moonlight streaming through the front windows, casting ghostly shadows across the aisles he'd walked 1,000 times. The faint scent of apples and coffee a bittersweet reminder of better days, a time when laughter filled the space. He sat on a stool behind the counter, his fingers tracing the worn grooves where he'd served his community for decades, the wood smooth under his touch, a testament to years of service, each scratch a story of its own. His eyes landed on a framed photo of Emily in her Air Force uniform, her smile a beacon of pride, the glass cool under Tom's thumb as he touched it, grounding him as doubts swirled in his mind like a storm. He remembered Emily at 6, helping at the counter, handing a customer a lollipop with a toothy grin, her laughter echoing through the store like a melody, a sound that had once been the heartbeat of this place. "What would you do, sweetheart?" he whispered to the empty store, his voice a fragile thread in the stillness, the words hanging heavy in the air, a plea for guidance in the darkness. "If your family needed help, would someone step up?" The question lingered, a haunting echo, as Tom grappled with whether his kindness was noble or a reckless risk that might cost them everything. The silence of the store a heavy weight on his shoulders. Upstairs, Margaret sat alone at the table, the ledger open but untouched for hours, the stew cold. It sent a faint memory in the chilly room, the air heavy with the weight of their struggles. She stared at the red numbers, each one a silent rebuke, a reminder of the sacrifices they'd made to keep the store alive, the columns of debt a testament to their fight, a battle they seemed destined to lose. Her mind drifted to their early days, taking over Bennett's corner store from Tom's father, the joy of their first profit, Emily's laughter as she played in the aisles, her small hands reaching for oranges on the lower shelves, her giggles a melody that had once filled their lives with light. Those memories felt like a distant dream now, overshadowed by Megamart's shadow, the looming mortgage, the constant fear of losing everything they'd built. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back, her hands clenching into fists on the table, her nails digging into her palms as she fought to hold herself together, her heart aching with the weight of their reality. She remembered Tom at the Veterans Hospital 43 years ago, bringing her a coffee during a late shift, his shy smile breaking through her exhaustion. A man who'd give his last dime to anyone in need. A man whose heart had captured hers in an instant. She thought of a winter when they donated their Christmas savings to a struggling vet, Tom's eyes alight with purpose as they handed over the money, the warmth of his hand and hers a promise of better days. But now, that generosity felt like a burden, a double-edged sword that cut deep, threatening to sever the life they'd built. "Please, let this be okay," she whispered, her breath fogging the window, a prayer to a world that often turned a blind eye, her voice a fragile plea in the night, a desperate hope against the gathering storm. The next morning, Tom opened Bennett's corner store as the sun peeked over the horizon, its golden light filtering through the windows, casting a warm glow over the aisles, a fleeting promise of hope in a world of uncertainty. He moved through his routine with robotic precision, stacking apples in neat rows, their waxy skins cool under his fingers, the faint scent of their sweetness a small comfort. Brewing the free coffee that filled the air with a rich, comforting aroma, the steam rising like a promise of normalcy, a ritual that had once brought him joy. But Margaret's words gnawed at him, the bank's deadline a ticking clock just 5 days away, its rhythm a constant throb in his temples, a relentless reminder of their peril. The weight pressed against his chest, a dull ache no coffee could ease, his heart heavy with the burden of their future, each beat a question he couldn't answer. Mrs. Larson, a retired librarian and loyal customer, noticed his distraction as she selected her usual rye bread, its crust crackling softly in her hands, the sound a small comfort in the quiet morning. "You okay, Tom? You seem distant," she said, her voice soft with concern, her green eyes searching his face, the lines around them deepening with worry, her presence a reminder of the community he'd served for so long. Tom forced a smile, the effort heavy, his lips quivering as he struggled to maintain the facade, the mask of normalcy slipping with every passing moment. Just thinking about inventory, he lied, nearly dropping a loaf as he restocked. The thud against his palm a sharp reminder of reality. The bread's weight a mirror to the burden he carried, a burden that threatened to crush him. By late morning, the store hummed with its usual rhythm. An elderly couple debated over potatoes, their voices a soft hum as the earthy scent filled the air, a reminder of simpler times. A young father shopped with his toddler, the child giggling in a stroller, reaching for a box of cereal with tiny, eager hands, his laughter a bright note in the morning, a fleeting moment of joy in a world of uncertainty. Tom was wondering if selling Margaret's grandmother's antique lamp, its glow a memory of family game nights, the light a symbol of joy from years past, might buy them a few more weeks when a low rumble interrupted his thoughts, a sound that seemed to rise from the earth itself, a tremor that sent a chill down his spine. He thought it was thunder, the kind that swept in and soaked the town, a familiar comfort, the memory of rain against the roof a soothing echo from better days. But the sky was a clear blue, the sunlight glinting off the windows, not a cloud in sight. The beauty of the morning a cruel contrast to the dread rising in his chest. The sound grew louder, a deep growl of engines. Multiple vehicles, approaching with intent that sent a shiver through Tom, the hairs on his arms rising as a sense of foreboding settled over him, a shadow that darkened the morning light. What in the world? Mr. Jenkins, a regular, peered up from his shopping list, his glasses slipping down his nose as he looked toward the windows, his brow creased with confusion, his voice tinged with unease, the question hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Tom moved to the front windows, his heart racing, the glass cold against his palm as he leaned in, his breath fogging the pain as he peered out, his pulse pounding in his ears. Outside, pedestrians froze, their bags forgotten, staring down Elm Street, the morning breeze carrying the faint scent of exhaust, a sharp contrast to the usual scent of cedar that defined Willow Creek, the air thick with anticipation. The rumble turned into a roar, rattling the jars on the shelves, a few crashing to the floor with a clatter that made Tom jump, the sound a sharp warning in the quiet store, the shards of glass glinting in the sunlight like a bad omen, a portent of the unknown. Then they appeared, a convoy of military vehicles, led by a massive armored Humvee, its gray paint gleaming in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the small-town charm of Willow Creek, its bulk an imposing presence that seemed to swallow the street. Behind it rolled 5 transport trucks and several jeeps, their tires kicking up dust, their military insignia bold against the quaint backdrop, the dust swirling in the air like a storm cloud, a harbinger of change. "Is this a parade?" someone whispered, their voice tinged with hope that quickly faded, the words a fragile thread in the growing tension, a hope that dissolved as quickly as it had formed. But there was no celebration in their movements. The vehicles stopped with precision, encircling Bennett's corner store, the Humvee blocking the entrance like a fortress, its shadow stretching across the door, a dark omen in the morning light, a barrier between Tom and the life he'd known. Soldiers spilled out, at least 40, in full gear, their boots hitting the pavement with a synchronized thud that echoed through the morning, a drumbeat of tension that seemed to shake the very ground, a rhythm that matched the pounding of Tom's heart. They formed a perimeter with swift efficiency, their movements a dance of discipline, their rifles slung across their chests, the metal glinting in the sunlight, a cold reminder of their purpose, a stark contrast to the warmth of the store. Tom's mind raced, his breath catching in his throat, a cold sweat beading on his forehead as his heart pounded against his ribs, each beat a question he couldn't answer. A national crisis he hadn't heard about? A training exercise? Or worse, news of Emily? Fear coiled in his gut, a slithering dread as he pictured the worst. A knock, a folded flag, a life lost far from home. The image of Emily's smile fading into a nightmare, a vision that stole the air from his lungs. Inside, customers crowded the windows, their whispers anxious, their faces pale with confusion, the air thick with unease, the hum of the cooler a faint backdrop to their fear, a reminder of the normalcy that had slipped away. Outside, townsfolk gathered across the street, phones out to record, their murmurs a low hum through the glass, the click of cameras a staccato beat in the silence, a testament to the spectacle unfolding, a moment that would be etched into the town's history. A senior officer emerged from the Humvee, his uniform adorned with insignia that spoke of high rank, his face a mask of authority as he scanned the storefront, his eyes sharp as a blade, cutting through the morning light, a predator assessing its prey. He spoke into a radio, his words clipped. Target confirmed, proceed with caution, the static crackling faintly, sending a shiver through Tom, the cryptic message fueling his growing fear, a puzzle he couldn't solve. The officer hesitated, eyeing Tom through the glass as if weighing a secret, his gaze a physical weight that made Tom's skin prickle, then strode toward the entrance with a determined gait that made Tom's stomach lurch, his pulse pounding in his ears, a relentless drumbeat of dread that drowned out all else. The bell chimed, a harsh note in the tense air. As the officer entered, his boots clicking on the tile, the sound a jarring intrusion into the familiar quiet. Each step a reminder of the unknown, a harbinger of change. His gaze swept the store, noting the sparse shelves, the lingering coffee scent, before locking onto Tom with predatory precision, his eyes unyielding, a storm brewing in their depths. "Thomas Bennett?" His voice was a command, deep and unyielding, filling the space, its resonance a weight that pressed against Tom's chest, a force that demanded attention. Tom swallowed, his throat dry as sandpaper, his voice a whisper, barely audible over the pounding of his own heart. "That's me, sir," he managed, his hands trembling at his sides, his body braced for the unknown. "We need you to step outside, now," the officer said, his tone sharp, the urgency a blade of tension that cut through the air, a command that brooked no argument. The store fell silent, the air heavy with dread, the hum of the cooler the only sound, a faint reminder of normalcy in a moment that felt anything but a lifeline slipping through their fingers. Mrs. Larson clutched her basket, her knuckles white, her eyes wide with fear, the wicker creaking in her grip, a small sound in the oppressive silence, a testament to the tension that gripped them all. The young father pulled his toddler close, whispering reassurances as the child whimpered, the soft cries a stark contrast to the moment's gravity, a reminder of the innocence caught in the crossfire, a fragile thread in the storm. The back door burst open with a bang, the wood slamming against the wall, and Margaret rushed in from their apartment, her face ashen, her hair disheveled from a sleepless night, strands sticking to her tear-streaked cheeks, her eyes wild with panic, a mother's fear etched into every line of her face. "Tom, what's going on? Why are there military trucks everywhere?" Her voice shook, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater, the fabric stretching as she froze at the sight of the officer, his presence a stark contrast to their daily life, a symbol of the unknown that loomed over them, a shadow that threatened to swallow them whole. Tom saw the terror in Margaret's eyes, a mirror to his own, a cold shiver racing down his spine as his heart clenched with fear, the dread a living thing that coiled in his chest. He stepped to her side, taking her trembling hand, her skin warm against his, her pulse racing under his fingers, a frantic rhythm that matched his own, a shared fear that bound them together. "It's all right," he whispered, though the lie tasted bitter, a desperate shield against the unknown, his voice a fragile thread of comfort in the storm, a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. They followed the officer outside, the morning air biting at their faces, the scent of dew and exhaust mixing as they stepped into the surreal scene. Soldiers at attention, their uniforms crisp in the dawn light, vehicles lining the street, a growing crowd of neighbors watching in awe, their breaths visible in the chill, a collective gasp hanging in the air, a moment frozen in time. Mrs. Harper from the florist stood with her arms crossed, the scent of roses clinging to her coat. The Millers from the hardware store whispered, their hands dusty with paint. Pastor Evans from Willow Creek Church held his Bible, its pages worn, all drawn by the spectacle, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern, their voices a low murmur against the silence, a tide of speculation that rose with each passing moment, a community united by the unknown. The officer turned to them, his expression unreadable, his eyes piercing as they studied Tom, the weight of his gaze a physical force that made Tom's skin prickle, a scrutiny that left him exposed. "Mr. Bennett, you helped a family last night, the Carter family?" Margaret's grip tightened, her nails digging into Tom's palm, a silent plea for answers. her breath hitching with every moment of uncertainty, her heart pounding against his arm, a frantic rhythm that echoed his own. So this was about his kindness. But why the military? Why the convoy? Why the armed soldiers surrounding their store like a battlefield, their presence a shadow over the life he'd built? Yes, sir, Tom said, his voice steadier than he felt, though his heart pounded like a drum. Each beat a question he couldn't answer, a rhythm of fear and confusion that threatened to overwhelm him. They came in, I helped them. They're new here. The officer's gaze bore into him, searching for something Tom couldn't name, the intensity making his skin crawl, a sense of being weighed and measured, a judgment he couldn't escape. Tell me exactly what happened between you and Colonel David Carter, he said, his voice low, the word colonel hanging in the air like a riddle, a puzzle piece waiting to fit into the chaos, a revelation that deepened the mystery. Tom's confusion must have shown, his brow furrowing as he replayed the night, David's weary eyes and quiet strength a blur against the officer's words, the memory a jumbled tapestry he couldn't unravel, a puzzle that refused to come together. Could this be about Emily? Or some kind of scam? Tom whispered to Margaret, his voice barely audible, her eyes wide with the same questions, her breath hitching as she clung to his arm, her fear a mirror to his own. The officer tilted his head, a flicker of amusement crossing his stern face, the corner of his mouth twitching, a small crack in his authoritative facade, a hint of humanity in the storm. You didn't know who he was, did you? He asked, his tone softer but still edged with curiosity, his eyes narrowing as if testing Tom's response, searching for a deeper truth, a secret waiting to be uncovered. He was a vet who needed help, Tom replied, his voice firm despite the uncertainty in his gut, the truth of his intent a shield against the unknown, a steadfast anchor in the storm, a conviction that grounded him. That's all I knew. That's all that mattered. The officer nodded, the tension easing slightly, a subtle shift in the air, a crack in the storm clouds. Did he say anything unusual during your talk? He pressed, each word a step closer to a truth Tom couldn't grasp, a deliberate probe that heightened the suspense, a question that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Tom shook his head, his mind racing back to David's limp, his soldierly posture, the way he'd hesitated before accepting help, the faint shake in his hands as he counted his money, the coins clinking softly in the quiet store, a sound that echoed in Tom's memory. No, sir, he said, his voice faltering, the memory a tangled web he couldn't untangle, a puzzle that refused to come together, a mystery that deepened with every word. He just seemed like a man trying to care for his family. Nothing more, nothing less. The officer's gaze held his for a long moment, the silence stretching tight as a wire, the crowd beyond the perimeter holding its breath, the click of a camera shutter breaking the stillness, a sharp reminder of the world watching, a moment captured in time. And the note you left, the $50, the officer continued, his voice measured, each word a careful probe, a step closer to the revelation Tom could feel looming, a truth that waited just out of reach. Why did you do that? Tom swallowed, his throat tight, the memory of his own struggles a raw wound reopened, the sting of those lean years as fresh as ever, a pain that never truly faded. Because I've been where he is, he said simply, the words heavy with his own battles, the nights he'd skipped meals to feed Emily, the quiet sacrifices that had defined his life, the scars that shaped him. I wanted to help. I couldn't turn away. The officer's stern face softened into a smile, a sudden shift that sent a ripple of confusion through Tom. The warmth in the officer's eyes a stark contrast to his uniform's cold steel, a jarring change that left Tom reeling, his breath catching in his chest. Sir, the man you helped was Colonel David Carter, one of the most decorated officers in his unit, he said, his voice carrying across the quiet street, the words a thunderclap in the stillness, a revelation that echoed through the crowd, a shockwave that rippled through the morning air. But he'd never tell you that himself. Humility is his armor. Tom's pulse quickened, his breath catching in his chest, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow as the ground seemed to tilt beneath him, the world shifting on its axis. I don't understand, he said, his voice barely audible over the crowd's murmur, the world spinning around him, a dizzying whirl of emotion. Why send a convoy over some groceries and $50? What does this mean? The officer's gaze held his, steady and unwavering, a lifeline in the storm, the intensity of it a promise of answers, a beacon in the chaos. Colonel Carter leads Bravo Squadron, 3rd Wing, Air Force, your daughter's unit, Mr. Bennett, he said, the words a bombshell that shattered the morning's silence, a revelation that hit Tom like a physical blow. The world spun, the revelation of force that left Tom reeling, his knees weakening as the words sank in, a tidal wave of emotion crashing over him, threatening to pull him under. Emily? This is about Emily? His voice broke, the calm he'd clung to shattering, fear surging to the surface, a raw, primal terror that clawed at his heart, a father's worst nightmare come to life. Margaret's nails dug deeper into his arm, her breath hitching as she whispered, "Is she okay? Has something happened?" Her voice a fragile thread of hope, her eyes pleading for reassurance, the fear in them a mirror to Tom's own, a shared dread that bound them together. The officer's voice remained calm, professional, but a warmth now softened it, a humanity that eased their fear, a steady presence in the chaos, a rock in the storm. 5 days ago, during a classified operation, their unit was attacked, he said, his words measured, each one a blow to Tom's fragile composure, the memory of Emily's last call flashing through his mind, her laughter a distant echo that now felt like a cruel taunt. A missile strike hit their base. Your daughter, Lieutenant Bennett, was trapped in the wreckage, pinned beneath the debris as flames closed in. Tom's knees buckled, his vision blurring as the words struck him, the air rushing from his lungs in a gasp, the world narrowing to a single, devastating point, a nightmare he couldn't escape. Margaret clung to him, her hand flying to her mouth, a sob escaping as she buried her face in his shoulder, her tears soaking his shirt, her body trembling with the force of her fear, a mother's anguish laid bare. Colonel Carter went back into that burning wreckage, against orders, to pull her out. The officer continued, his voice steady but laced with respect, the heroism heavy in the air, a testament to the man Tom had helped, a courage that defied the odds. Emily had told Carter about the store during the chaos, her voice steady despite the flames. "It's my anchor, sir." A confession that had driven Carter to act, a connection that had saved a life, a bond forged in the crucible of danger. He sustained critical injuries and was airlifted here for recovery. His leg nearly shattered, his lungs scarred by smoke, but he never hesitated. Tom's mind reeled, the pieces falling into place. David's limp, his tired eyes, the quiet strength. A puzzle now clear with devastating clarity, a truth that hit like a physical blow, a revelation that left him breathless. "You're saying the man I helped saved Emily's life?" Tom asked, his voice trembling, gratitude and disbelief crashing over him like a wave, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and awe, a father's gratitude a living thing in his chest. "Yes, sir," the officer said, a genuine respect in his eyes that made Tom's throat tighten, the sincerity a lifeline in the chaos, a beacon of hope in the storm, a light in the darkness. From behind him, David Carter stepped forward, now in dress uniform, his medals gleaming despite the limp that marked each step, the crisp lines of his attire a stark contrast to the weary man of the night before, his presence a testament to his courage, a hero in the morning light. "I didn't want to take your help, Mr. Bennett," David said, his voice carrying over the silent crowd, each word a testament to the pride that had carried him through his career, the weight of it etched into his features, the lines on his face a map of his sacrifices, a story of survival. "Pride, I suppose, it's a hard thing to let go of, even when you're drowning. But when I found your note and the $50, I reported it to my commander, an extraordinary act of kindness from a fellow vet. I had no idea you were Emily's father, not until I saw her photo in the wreckage, her smile a beacon through the smoke." Margaret sobbed openly now, her hand pressed over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks as she listened, her body trembling with the force of her relief, the fear that had gripped her giving way to a flood of gratitude, a mother's heart laid bare. "Is Emily okay?" she managed, her voice choked with emotion, her eyes pleading for reassurance, the hope in them a fragile flame that flickered in the morning light, a desperate need for confirmation. "Yes, ma'am," David replied, his tone softening as he met her gaze, the warmth in his eyes a mirror to her own, a shared understanding of the stakes they'd faced, a bond forged in the crucible of survival. Thanks to me, she has minor injuries and is back with her unit, stronger than ever. I needed surgery, so I was sent home to recover. My leg will heal, but the memory of that night will stay with me forever. The crowd, silent until now, erupted into applause, the sound swelling like a wave, a collective release of tension, the clapping a rhythm of celebration and awe, a testament to the story unfolding before them, a moment of unity in the face of adversity. David stepped forward, offering his hand to Tom, his eyes steady despite the emotion within them, the calluses on his palm a testament to his service, a physical reminder of the battles he'd fought, a connection that transcended words. Your daughter is an incredible mechanic, sir. She speaks of this store with such pride. It's her anchor, her home. Tom shook his hand, emotions choking his words, gratitude and awe rendering him speechless, his throat tight with unshed tears, the weight of the moment a heavy, beautiful burden, a father's relief a tangible thing. But the story didn't end there. A senior officer, General Hayes, approached, his presence commanding as he extended a hand to Tom, the silver of his insignia catching the light, a symbol of the authority that had brought this moment to life, a force of change in the morning air. Mr. Bennett, when word of your kindness, helping Colonel Carter's family while facing your own struggles, reached your daughter's unit, they rallied, he said, his voice warm but authoritative, a promise of support that resonated through the crowd, a beacon of hope in the storm. He gestured to the trucks, their doors now open, airmen unloading box after box with swift precision, the thud of cardboard a new rhythm in the morning, a sound of hope and renewal, a lifeline for a store on the brink. The whole squadron pitched in. They wanted to honor the man who helped one of their own. Tom watched, his breath catching in his throat as the airmen carried premium groceries, household goods, cases of high-quality canned goods, their labels pristine, fresh vegetables, the scent of potatoes and oranges wafting through the air, a promise of abundance. Even small appliances, their boxes gleaming with promise. Items Tom could never have stocked, a lifeline for a store on the brink of collapse, a miracle unfolding before his eyes. Margaret wept beside him, her hands clasped over her heart, her tears catching the sunlight like stars, her sobs a mix of relief and joy, a release of the fear that had held her captive, a mother's gratitude a living thing. Another officer, a young woman in uniform, approached, her face solemn as she handed Tom a thick envelope, the paper crinkling under his trembling fingers, the sound a small note in the morning symphony, a quiet promise of change. Sir, the Air Force Relief Fund learned of your situation, she said, her voice steady, a quiet strength in her words, a reflection of the support that had come to their aid, a testament to the power of community. This is for you. Tom opened it, the flap catching on his thumb, revealing a check large enough to clear their mortgage, the numbers a blur through his tears, with a note. To one of our own families. The weight of the gesture hit him like a tidal wave, his eyes blurring as he looked at Margaret, her face a mirror of his own disbelief and gratitude, her hand reaching for his as they stood together in the miracle unfolding before them, their fingers intertwining in a silent promise of unity, a bond that had carried them through the storm. The crowd parted, gasps rippling through the townsfolk as a familiar figure stepped forward, a young woman in uniform, her right arm in a sling, but her smile unmistakable, a beacon of light in the morning's chaos, the sunlight glinting off her wings, a symbol of her courage, a daughter's return. Emily, Margaret cried, her voice breaking as she ran to her, her feet pounding the pavement, the sound a heartbeat of hope that echoed through the street, a mother's joy laid bare. Hey, Mom, Emily Bennett said, wrapping her good arm around her as Margaret crashed into her, sobs shaking her frame. The warmth of their embrace a stark contrast to the fear of moments before, a moment of pure, unfiltered joy that lit up the morning. They gave me emergency leave when they heard what happened, Emily explained, her voice soft but steady, her eyes shining with emotion as she looked at her father, the love in them a balm to Tom's soul, a reminder of the bond that had sustained them through the years, a daughter's pride a tangible thing. Tom approached, tears streaming down his face. the salt stinging his skin, and embraced his daughter, the warmth of her presence a balm to the fear that had gripped him, the fabric of her uniform rough against his cheek, a tangible reminder of Emily's survival, a miracle he could hold in his arms. "You didn't tell us you were hurt," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he touched Emily's sling, the bandage a stark reminder of her bravery, a symbol of the sacrifice that had brought her home, a father's fear giving way to relief. "It's just a dislocated elbow, Dad. Thanks to Colonel Carter," Emily said, her voice breaking slightly, the gratitude in her eyes a mirror to her father's, the memory of that moment a shadow they'd carry together, a testament to the courage that had saved her. "He shouted my name through the flames, a voice I'll never forget, a lifeline in the darkness," she added, her words heavy with the weight of survival, the unspoken outcome a chilling what if that lingered like a ghost, a reminder of how close they'd come to loss, a nightmare averted by a hero's courage. The people of Willow Creek, now understanding the full story, joined the airmen in unloading supplies, their hands working alongside the uniformed men and women, laughter and chatter filling the air, the morning's tension giving way to a shared sense of purpose and joy, the scent of fresh vegetables mingling with the salt of tears, a symphony of renewal that echoed through the street. 3 months later, Bennett's corner store was reborn, the mortgage paid, inventory expanded with goods that drew customers from miles around, business thriving with a vibrancy it hadn't seen in years, a phoenix rising from the ashes. Tom created a veteran's nook in the store, a cozy corner with a coffee pot steaming with warmth, resources for veterans on a wooden table, and a bulletin board for military families to connect, a testament to the ripple effect of his kindness, the soft hum of conversation, a new heartbeat in the space, a legacy of compassion that would endure. David Carter, now a regular at the store, sat with Tom in the veteran's nook, the aroma of fresh coffee blending with the quiet exchange of stories, tales of their service, the dust of distant deserts, the hum of engines overhead, and Emily's latest missions, her voice a distant echo in their words, a reminder of the lives they'd touched, a bond forged in kindness and courage. "She gets her heart from you," David said, watching Tom hand out coffee to a young veteran couple, their faces tired but hopeful, the steam rising like a promise of better days, a small act of kindness that echoed the one that had started it all. Tom shook his head, his humility a reflection of his soul, the lines on his face a map of his journey, a story of struggle and redemption. "I did what anyone would," he murmured, the words soft but firm, a testament to his belief in the goodness of others, a conviction that had guided him through the storm. David smiled, the warmth in his eyes a mirror to the bond they'd forged, a connection born of shared sacrifice. "That's where you're wrong. Most wouldn't. That's what makes it extraordinary," he replied, the truth settling over them like a gentle breeze, a quiet affirmation of the impact they'd had, a legacy that would live on. A year later, during what the town now called the Bennett Legacy, Tom stood outside his revitalized store, the paint fresh and the windows sparkling, alongside David, Emily, home on leave, her sling gone, her stance proud, and Margaret, her smile radiant with relief, the lines on her face softened by joy, a family reunited in the light of a new day. The base commander awarded Tom the Civilian Honor Medal, the medal cool against his palm, a symbol of the impact he'd made, for founding Operation Bennett, a program supporting military families in transition, its roots deep in the community's heart, a legacy that would endure for generations. A reporter approached, her microphone gleaming in the sunlight, and asked how he felt. Tom paused, the moment's weight settling into his bones, a reflective moment that held the crowd in silence, a breath held in anticipation. "In life, what you give comes back in ways you can't imagine," he said, his voice carrying the wisdom of a man who'd seen both struggle and redemption, the words a bridge to every listener, a universal truth that resonated deep within, tying together themes of resilience, compassion, and the enduring power of hope. A few free groceries can change someone's world, and yours. Kindness is a ripple that becomes a wave, and we're all part of its current. Reflect on this. What small act of kindness has woven a thread of hope into your life? Share your story in 50 words or less in the comments below. top stories will be featured in next week's video. Let's build a community of compassion together, inspired by Tom's journey, right here at Daily Narrated Stories, where stories of the human spirit come to life. At Daily Narrated Stories, we share tales like these, stories of courage, resilience, and the human spirit that remind us what truly matters, inspiring us to find the light in the darkest moments. Don't miss out on the next inspiring journey. Next week, a farmer's generosity transforms a town. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and join our family of storytellers. Subscribe within the next 24 hours for a chance to win a Bennett's Corner store-inspired gift. Time is fleeting, and this chance to connect won't last forever. Be part of our community today, because your story could be the spark that lights up someone's world.